Hey guys, I'm Dante and welcome back to the Burgos Art Reviews. Today we're going to review one of my favorite stories, The Dark Crystal by the Jim Henson Company. You know Jim Henson, they made the Muppets, they made Sesame Street Muppets, they've done a number of things, and they're still around today, even though sadly Mr. Henson himself has passed away. And we're going to be looking at a comic that of course is an extension of the Dark Crystal movie. Now, for those of you not in the know, Dark Crystal was considered Jim Henson's coup de grace in terms of his imaginative style. The creators behind this are Jim Henson and Brian Froud. The idea behind the movie was concept before story. In other words, they created all the creatures, they created the sets, the worlds, all of that, and then from there, developed the story. Froud was the main illustrator, or rather the main designer. He was known mainly for his Eastern European designs of fantasy. We're talking the big-nosed trolls, the fair folk that live in the forest and become one with the forest. Beautiful, textured artwork. Amazing stuff. So much that Jim Henson said, hey, I like that. So, Jim Henson grabbed him, brought him back to his studio and says, I want you to draw all these characters based on some general ideas, and from there the story will unfold. Now, what makes the Dark Crystal so unique is that there's no people in the movie. There's no people at all, no humans, that is. The entire movie are puppets. Every scene is a creature, a thing, a set built by the Jim Henson Company. And what department of the Jim Henson Company? We're talking the Creature Shop. This movie helped put the Creature Shop on the map. So, you have the Muppets, which are soft and fluffy, and they bounce around when they move because they're puppets. But then you have the Creature Shop, which was realistic looking creatures. They wanted this movie to look real. They didn't want the characters to bounce, they want them to walk. So they have humanoid characters. These are kind of fairy-esque looking characters. They're pointed ears, very cute looking characters. Giant reptilian monsters called the Skeksis, which are horrible creatures. Now, this movie is, I guess you could say, high fantasy and sci-fi, because it takes place on another planet. It deals with magic. It deals with creatures never seen before. So if you're into Dungeons and Dragons and into sci-fi and just weird stuff, it's up your alley. But I'll admit, concept before story is something I like to do as well, but it doesn't always work. The film is an amazing sight to see, but the story is a little bit jumbled, if not kind of baby fed to you. There's lots of narration. But we're not here to talk just about the movie. No, we're going to move to the comic book.
Hi!
Oh! Who are you?
I'm the new intern.
Did Trix hire you?
Yes, she did.
Okay. Why don't you go get me my books?
Sure thing.
Is he gone? I need to talk to you about our hiring process. Anyway, here we have the Dark Crystal. Creation Myths. Plural on the myth. It comes in 3 books. Third one I got. It's a hard copy. And you can tell already by the covers, it has amazing artwork. Now, going back to Brian Froud. Brian Froud was reconnected with the Jim Henson Company. They actually contacted him and said, hey, give us all your sketches. Give us all the characters that never made it into the film. Give us all the characters that you want to come up with now. We want to make a story for them. Now, we comes down to one writer and two artists. We have Brian Hogan, who is the main writer, and the illustrators who took Brian Froud's artwork and turned it into sequential art is Alex Sheikman and Lizzie John. I think Lizzie John is actually from Brooklyn. Here we go, Lizzie John. Lives in Brooklyn. and spends most of her days drawing pretty pictures. I love descriptions like that. Now, creation myth is odd, much like the actual movie itself of the Dark Crystal. It's not a flat-out prequel. It doesn't say these lead to the events of the film, which is really interesting because when you write stories like that, there's only so much you could do. You know certain characters are going to live and certain characters are going to die. This actually is exactly as it sounds, creation myth. It is a telling of the origins of the world itself. Now I say telling because in all these books, the story is being narrated to us by a mysterious figure. The entire series hinders on that concept, the entire book series. It hinders on the idea of, these are not facts, these are tales of how the world was created. Creative myth. In fact, the first book is broken up by the main story with random segments of, did you hear the story of the great adventurer who fought evil with nothing but his bare fist? Or, did you hear the story of how Ogre came to be? There's even a page in here for fans of the movie that explains how Gelflings, which are the main protagonists of our story, got their wings. Or rather, how did the girl Gelflings get their wings? And the story in here, which is only 2 pages, actually begins with a bunch of guys at a campfire, a bunch of Gelflings, and a stranger comes up and says, I have no money, but if you give me food, I'll tell you the story of how females got their wings. And all the Gelflings say, we've heard the story. They've heard all of them. And he says, well, you haven't heard this one. So creation myths is just that. It's a myth. You don't know if it's the real story or not, but it's still really good to read. Each artwork, or each page of artwork, is beautifully rendered in kind of storybook paint and color. You can kind of see the graphite pencils used to make these pages. You feel Brian Froud's actual artwork. You feel as if you're looking at an interpretation of his work, which is what the whole purpose of this book is for. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, much like the original movie, this story has its pros and cons. When you read the first book, featuring Ogre, the old and wise, on the cover, it's very disjointed. It's, once again, broken up by small, independent stories, but that's not the problem. The first book, which is about a 1/4 inch thick, is a setup. You get introduced to a lot of characters just randomly. This character shows up and does this, and this character shows up and does that, and nothing's connected. Nothing makes sense, really. It's just people popping up. But if you hang in there, in the second chapter, it all starts to come together nicely. A lot of seemingly side characters begin to converge into a solid storyline, a bit more coherent. There is a bit of time jumping done in the book, since the tale takes place over roughly 1,000 years. So some characters pop up, but then after a few pages, they disappear again. And some will return, and other ones just never return. There are certain points in the book where I thought they were going to carry through with certain plot points. Nothing really gets held dangling over a cliff, but a character shows up and you expect that scene to mean something deeper later on, when it really doesn't. So it's, once again, stories told at a campfire. They're just there to entertain you until you get to the next stop. But of course, there is one solid narrative going throughout the entire story, which is how the planet of Dra was created. Dra is the main planet, of course. What is the crystal that will one day be called the Dark Crystal? Where did the Gelflings come from? Where did the villainous Skeksis come from? And the mystics, who are pretty much the opposite end of the Skeksis. The so nice they become complete pacifists. Where did they all come from? Where are they all going? And it's an adventure story. It's about people going on an adventure, discovering these things. On the final book, once again, hard copy. Oh, it just feels good. It's that hard copy. You gotta love it. Everything comes to a head. Many of the main characters converge to, of course, solve a mystery that's been plaguing them for hundreds of years. And as mentioned before, some characters just drop out. If you ever played any kind of Final Fantasy game, Dungeons and Dragons, adventure game, role-playing game, you know sometimes you have your main party whose quest is to slay the dragon. And along the way, they find an adventurer who says, I'll join you up to the mountain peak of whatever. And you go on this great adventure. You fight goblins and trolls and you collect gold. And then you reach the mountain peak. And at that point he says, it has been a great adventure, but I must leave you now, because this is where my adventure ends. And he leaves. Your adventure is still going on, but that character's gone. The book has that feel. It has that oddity of, he joined us for a short time and we'll never forget it, but now he's gone. Which, in a larger scale, works. In a 3-chapter comic, it's a little iffy. But then again, the idea behind this, as I mentioned, is not to lead directly into the movie. It is its own point in history in the Dark Crystal saga. So, as the phrase goes, it's not the destination, it's the journey.
Hello.
Ah!
I brought coffee.
Is that for me?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Is this mocha?
It's Bustelo with chocolate syrup.
We're keeping him.
Yay!
That was good. That was real good. So, final thoughts. If you're looking for interesting fantasy artwork, you'll find it. If you're looking to expand upon nostalgia of the Dark Crystal, or just how bizarre Jim Henson's mind and Brian Fraud's mind really is, you'll like it too. Every single page has little weird creatures in the background, just like in the Dark Crystal movie. They're not needed, they're just there in the background. Our characters are walking to a village and there's weird fish that fly across the panel from one pond to another. There's little bugs, little things like that, little details. So artwork wise, definitely a nice grab. History of Dark Crystal, also a good grab. Meaning history of the creation of Dark Crystal. You have a lot of background information on various characters, as well as information about the artists, of course, all the artists, the writers, everyone who worked behind the scenes on this and even the original film. Once again, it's a little disjointed. You can't just read the first chapter. You would have to go through all the chapters to get a semi-bittersweet ending. There are happy moments and sad moments, but in the end, you know, this is not the end of the tale. The movie is. But when reading it, you can imagine an entire world where more and more stories come from. So if you're someone who likes writing fanfics, this shows you how open a universe can be. If you're a fan of Dark Crystal, if you're a fan of Jim Henson's work, or work that resembles old Eastern European folklore, get it. But if you're looking for something that you can enter without any real backstory on, this is not it. This is not a book for you if you're looking for an independent story, for something new, and don't really intend to go deeper into, well, the myths of Dark Crystal. I liked it. It filled a little gap in my heart because, as I said, the movie was a little disjointed. The movie needed a bit more, as much as I love it. And this adds more to it, but wants you wanting more as well, which could be good or bad. If you have a few bucks, let me see. This went for these go for 15 bucks. But if you're an avid collector of Jim Henson work, get this. You will enjoy it. If you're looking for superheroes and adventure and solid conclusions, you might want to look somewhere else. But hey, it's a fun read. Anyway, guys, that was my opinion of the Dark Crystal creation myths. I say if you haven't seen the movie, go rent it somewhere. Give it a look over. It's something to behold, just for its visual aspect alone. Anyway, guys, I am Dante. Like, favorite, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the future. Later. Freaking Craigslist.
So that's what I told them, but... Nice place you have here.
Bonjour. You are out of milk, good sir.
Get out of my house!
Huh? Ninja, vanish! Ninja.
Ninja. Your skin is so soft.
Thank you, thank you. Weirdos.
Ninja!